think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. Yeah, so instead of Joe Biden, just refer to him as Quid Pro Joe from now on. Quid Pro Joe Biden. Welcome to the program, ladies and gentlemen. This is Conduit News. You've found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a Liberty Machines. Johnny Cash Friday, for those of you listening on the radio, we'll be getting you as much Johnny Cash music as we can, while at the same time peppering in the news and events of the day, as soon as we can. But we got a lot of news to get to, stuff that's fallen through the cracks. Also some other stuff. I mean, obviously, we've got current news to get to. My goodness. Got an update on China and Chinadelphia. Talk Business and Politics has the lead on that, reporting. They've got some quotes. Apparently, what the Chinese consul was here in Arkansas. I read that. That's very interesting. Also, we have this piece in the Gazette this morning. Census shows widening income gap in Arkansas. This has got a lot of people who are leftists and potential, closet socialists freaking out. They're claiming, they're using this term income inequality, and it's like, you know what? Why don't you just go vote for Elizabeth Warren? You know what I mean? Like, go vote for Bernie Sanders. All this. They're talking about an earned income tax credit, and you know who they go to? They go to Senator Jim Hendren in this article by Jenny Monk, and they talk about how he's a Republican and he proposed an earned income tax credit, and they're basically aligning him with the left, and they love this when Republicans cave because they don't really believe in the principles of the platform, and they're going and siding with a Democrat dream. The Democrat dream of an earned income tax credit, which is more welfare and everything else. Those Republicans are used. It's the same thing with Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney gets all this press right now because he's a Republican that's willing to criticize President Trump. If you're a Republican that's willing to get on board with these leftist ideas, they celebrate you. And it's really a shame. We'll talk about this article later in the program. I mean, it really is... I hate to say this. I know this is harsh, but, I mean, it comes across more like an opinion piece because the ideology is just leaping off the page more than it just actual news. That's just me, by the way. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. You be the judge. Folks, I got to tell you. So I was out driving around this morning, and, by the way, the deer were up. Man, listen to the mainstream media. And it was very frustrating. I don't know about you guys, but I don't understand how it's no longer just, well, this is one side of the story. It's no longer, it's a complete and total fabrication and lie. The media and the press reporting on this president, most of them are corrupt. It's beyond fake news. When Pat Cadell back in 2012 said that the media was the enemy of the American people when they refused to give you the straight story on what happened in Benghazi on September 11th, he was right. Now, he was a pollster for Jimmy Carter. He passed away, Pat Cadell, and he said it then because he said that the press was the enemy of the people. They are. The fake news is the enemy of the folks. I'm just kind of speechless this morning because the summaries and the little stabs that I heard on the radio this morning from the mainstream media, were that the Director of National Intelligence said the report was, the whistleblower was credible. And that's what they report. And he did say that it was credible, but not in the sense that it's true, just in the sense that you followed the procedure to get to the point. That's what he meant by credible, so they edit that out. And by the way, Devin Nunes predicted in the hearing yesterday that that would happen. That very thing that happened, and that's frustrating. The White House is engaged in a cover-up. They covered it up. They knew it. The media makes absolutely no reference that this is the first president that continues to have private phone conversations with world leaders leak. It's happened not once, but it's happened twice, because these deep state totalitarian freaks are so opposed to a president looking out for America's interests, and we're coming to this realization that America's own intelligence community doesn't really care about American government, doesn't really care about the American people, some of them. We now know the Washington... Now, and this is what happened yesterday. That hearing was disastrous for the Democrats, by the way. It really was. And the credibility of the whistleblower was called into question. It was a nosedive. And so you know what then the New York Times did? They outed him as a CIA agent, trying to bolster his credibility. Make no mistake about it. That hearing yesterday hurt the credibility of this so-called whistleblower, who's not really a whistleblower because it wasn't even first-hand information. So the CIA then outs him as or the New York Times then outs him as a CIA agent to try to bolster it. But it actually raises even more questions. You have this guy who's on detail. He's assigned to the White House, and he ends up taking second and third-hand information and filing a complaint, and then you read the complaint, and it looks like lawyers and attorneys wrote it. Maybe this guy is an attorney. But then you find out that Adam Schiff has had the complaint since like August and has just sat on it. Maybe it was like, well, we've got a story brewing. We're going to put it in a glass case in case of emergency. In case of emergency, we're going to break glass and we're going to launch this new scandal against the president. Well, what was the emergency? Well, I think the emergency was the fact that John Solomon now has sworn affidavits of the fired attorney general over in Ukraine, who says specifically he was told they couldn't find any corruption in him. He was told he was fired specifically because Joe Biden wanted him gone because he was investigating the company Burisma, where his son sits on the board. And they told him, and if you go read the documents, they told him, they said, man, I'm sorry we have to fire you, but they're not going to give us $1 billion, and we can't bankrupt the country of Ukraine. Quid pro Joe. Let's start at the top here. I mean, you know, sound off on Facebook. I want to know what you think right now. Facebook.com/Conduit News, or give me a text message, 870-275-9799. By the way, we have a great show for you. We're going to be talking to Gregory Wrightstone. He is the author of Inconvenient Facts, the Science Al Gore Doesn't Want You to Know. I wanted to have him on because of this whole Greta Thunberg thing. I mean, and that's something that's gotten lost in all of this. I think the deep state knew, by the way, that these documents that make Joe Biden a complete liar, they are crystal clear. He did what he did. They are now projecting this onto Trump. They've had this phone call. And the phone call, by the way, there is no mention anywhere in that phone call of money being held up for Ukraine. And now we find out, according to one report, that the Ukrainian government wasn't even aware that there was a $400 million freeze in money going to Ukraine. They didn't even know about it until a month later, after the call was over, which is a huge piece of information. Breitbart.com. Go to this one, Joe, first. Nolte. Idiot journalists see cover-up in White House trying to prevent leaks. This is a very good story because it's one of the few pieces out there that reminds you that the senior White House officials are aware that they are being spied on by their own intelligence community, and that there are people out there that can't be trusted. And because of that, yes, they are removing some communications or some records of communications and putting it in a more secure place. Because this president, in an unprecedented string of events, has had his private conversations with world leaders leaked to the press over and over again. And yet, oh, no, it must have been a cover-up because they knew something was said. Well, we have the transcript, and there's nothing there. So the press here, let's see here. The most trusted name in news, CNN. The whistleblower said White House officials intervened to lock down records of the call between President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky, according to the complaint. Blah, 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 blah. And then you got more and more and more and more. Here's the thing. Here's what the media doesn't want you to know. Later in the phony whistleblower's report, the phony whistleblower admits, according to White House officials I spoke with, this was not the first time under this administration that a presidential transcript was placed into the code word level system solely for the purpose of protecting politically sensitive rather than national security sensitive information. Okay, so Nolte is writing here, so this was not the only time. It was not only this conversation that the White House chose to add an extra layer of security to, but there were others. And then he writes this: never in the history of the Republic have phone calls between a sitting American president and a foreign leader been illegally leaked by the corrupt intelligence community until now. Twice already. Twice. Some traitor in the corrupted intelligence community has illegally leaked a phone call between our president and a foreign leader, and has done so purely for political purposes. August 2017, the far-left Washington Post published leaked transcripts of Trump's call with Mexico President Pena Nieto, along with the transcript of a call between Trump and Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. The transcripts of these calls were not leaked due to any wrongdoing on Trump's part. They were leaked to try to embarrass the president. So don't you think that's why they put it behind an extra level of security? Because they can't trust people, because our intelligence community, they can't. I was listening to Mark Levin last night on the way to the Mississippi County Republican Committee. By the way, it was a great meeting. I enjoyed being in front of the Mississippi Republicans, as I always do. And I was listening to Mark Levin, and he straight up said, you know what? The CIA is really good at toppling governments. We know that. And the CIA is doing the same thing now. And he said it knowing that he's going to get a lot of flack for it. And he didn't say it was all CIA, just like it's not all FBI agents. But this is what is going on right now. This guy was a CIA agent. Now, the New York Post, just so you know, New York Times identifies Trump as whistleblower. But here's the other thing. You want to know, this is where it really starts to get weird here. The American Thinker has a post out by Thomas Lifson. Go to the American Thinker article, Joe. Mitt Romney, advisor, sits on Burisma board of directors. This is the same Ukrainian company that Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, sits on. This is certainly an odd coincidence. In fact, when you dig in, you find an amazing series of coincidences. If you believe in coincidences, when the CIA is involved, that is. Mitt Romney's national security advisor in his 2012 campaign, a career CIA spook who rose to its top levels, sits on the board of directors of Burisma, the Ukrainian gas company that formerly paid Hunter Biden $50,000 a month despite his complete lack of credentials or qualifications. It's also an odd coincidence that Mitt has, as CNN puts it, been a lone Republican voice expressing concern about Donald Trump's July phone call with President Zelensky, in which Trump asked Ukrainian president to investigate former Vice President Joe Biden and his family. And also, the media is lying to you also because they want you to know nothing about the real favor that Trump asked, which was about CrowdStrike. Because the FBI never looked at the Democrat servers. Now, is that not weird to you? The FBI was never given the Democrat servers. No, instead they used this independent party CrowdStrike. And Trump is asking to the Ukraine president, he's saying, you know, this CrowdStrike stuff, this is weird. And then he was asked at the United Nations, do you think Ukraine has Hillary Clinton's 33,000 emails? And he said, probably, but there's a whole lot of other stuff. That's what this is about, folks. This is so much bigger. The scandal here is so much bigger than what we're talking about. The Democrat Party and the globalists were in their end game, and they got careless because they just thought that it was all an oligarchy. It was all an oligarchy, and most people were just asleep to it. And for people that say the President of the United States is not draining the swamp, I don't see how you can say that at this point. And it may not be what we as conservatives have wanted, the swamp drain from like an esoteric, budgetary this or there's apparently the corruption is so bad you got to start with the big stuff, right? Before you can actually talk about policies and issues. We've got what appears to be international organized crimes from what I can tell. And if anybody wants to stand up to corruption like that Ukrainian prosecutor wanted to, investigator, he gets fired. And Mitt Romney's national security advisor sits on the board. Maybe that has something to do with why everybody's freaking out over this. Why and so let's see, what else does it say here? You can read that article, by the way. Go look it up. But let's scroll down to this, because this is what you got to know. If you flash back to January 3rd of 2017, here's Rachel Maddow and Chuck Schumer. Listen to this.
This was his tweet just a little while ago tonight. You see the scare quotes there. The intelligence briefing on so-called Russian hacking was delayed until Friday. Perhaps more time needed to build a case. Very strange. We're actually told, intelligence sources tell NBC News since this tweet has been posted, that actually this intelligence briefing for the president-elect was always planned for Friday. It hasn't been delayed. But he's taking these shots, this antagonism, this taunting to the intelligence community.
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do this.
Wow.
What do you
Stop. So who are the real leaders of our country? I mean, Chuck Schumer seems to be speaking from personal experience, by the way. If you really kind of look what he's saying, I wonder what the intelligence community says to him to control him. Honest question. Seriously. 6 ways to Sunday. Now, that's a threat. And it's actually showing you, all you people out there that still don't believe that the deep state is this real thing. He's telling you right there. The guy, the whistleblower was a CIA agent. I mean, what more do you need? The CIA is supposed to operate under Article 2 of the Constitution, the executive branch. And it's not. So what do we do, folks? What do we do about this? This is serious. And the mainstream media, all they do is lie. And it's I honestly don't know what's going to come of this. I really don't. I think only thing I can do is let me just try to put my own personal fears or anxieties, aside. And I will tell you from a history, and we got to go to break. Go ahead and hit it, Joe. I will tell you from my own history, just looking back at what Trump has been through so far, what always seems to happen. They lay their nets for this president, and they fall into their own nets. It happens over and over and over again. Will it happen again this time? Well, it kind of already has, but we'll have to wait. I mean, with the release of the transcript and everything else, notice they just didn't care. Mainstream media doesn't care what's actually in. And then they lied about it by omitting 540 words to make it look like Trump asked a favor for him to look into Joe Biden. This is... The president uses the word treason. We'll be back in a moment. Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers.
So if you want to support the work that we're doing here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Go to conduitforcommerce.org right now.
Hey, welcome back to the program. We've got Brigadier General Robert S. Spalding, who's a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute. He focuses on U.S. and China relations. General Spalding, how are you, sir?
Great. How are you? Good morning.
Doing fantastic. I'm glad you could spend some more time with us. I want to remind everybody about your book that's out. We talked about this last time, Stealth War, How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept. Let me ask you this about that in the context of that book. Are America's elite still asleep, you think?
Actually, most of them still are, or they're in denial. However, some have started to wake up. In fact, last week, Schwartzman, the head of BlackRock, mentioned that, essentially China had taken advantage of the U.S. Now, this is kind of the first mention of anything like this out of Wall Street since all of these tariffs and everything started to take place.
Wow. Okay. Well, that certainly is a good development. I also know that you certainly focus on foreign policy, national security as well. What are your thoughts on the situation in Iran right now? I've got this CNN article.
Here we go.
Forgive me for using a source from CNN, but here we go. Real quick, a more rundown of this. If you're just joining us, there's now hard-clad. If you didn't believe the tape of Ironclad, sorry. If you didn't believe the tape of Joe Biden confessing to, essentially a quid pro Joe, well, now there's a document out there that proves it even more, a sworn affidavit by the fired prosecutor. Go to this tweet by Molly Hemingway, retweeting Kenneth Vogel. The Ukrainians weren't made aware that the assistance was being delayed/reviewed until more than a month after the call with President Trump. And that's huge news. Guy named Paul Sperry, wait a minute, check this out. Adam Schiff tweeted this exact same Trump-Ukraine collusion narrative a month ago. Exactly how long has Shifty Schiff and the Democrats been working with this whistleblower? Yeah, I don't know, long enough to write the complaint themselves. Trump is withholding vital military aid to Ukraine. This is back on August 28th, while his personal lawyer seeks help from the Ukrainian government to investigate his political opponent. It doesn't take a stable genius to see the magnitude of this conflict or how destructive. They have known and been planning this for a very long time, and they likely wrote the whistleblower complaint themselves. The president releases the transcript. There's nothing there. They were hoping, and I will tell you this is probably why they were so mad at the Director of National Intelligence, McGuire, for sitting on this complaint, because this complaint was supposed to be national news a week ago, or 2 weeks ago, and they just that's why they're so angry with him. Go see John Solomon's report up at the Hill. Solomon, these once secret memos cast doubt on Joe Biden's Ukraine story. That certainly is a soft-handed headline, but John Solomon, award-winning journalist, is now starting to get attacked by the left. It's ridiculous. Let me know what you guys think. We'll read some of your comments. We're going to get into this story. Headline from Wesley Brown at Talk Business and Politics. Sun Paper Project still faces trade headwinds despite Arkansas permit approval. We'll give you some quotes here from Governor Asa Hutchinson, once again, trying to do business with Chinese communist entities and bring them into the state of Arkansas. Back in a moment. Exclusive. Zarif threatens all-out war in case of military strike on Iran. This was, last week this story broke, and a lot of people were expecting some sort of response because of the situation in Saudi Arabia. How do you see it, General Spaulding?
Well, first of all, they've made those kinds of claims before, and they don't have a really capable military, so I'm not that concerned about that. They do seem to want to continue to cause mischief. I think a couple of things. One is, and this in the context of the book, the Chinese support them to the tune of billions of dollars. Their banks, their companies support the Iranians and their missile development. They support them in their wrecking of chaos in the region. So I think one of the things that we haven't done that we probably should do is focus on putting sanctions on Chinese banks and businesses. At the same time, the Iranians have to understand that if they continue to cause this mischief, there's going to be repercussions. Finally, just in our own energy markets, we can create the kind of shock absorber for the world that we couldn't, since the Middle East really took over the oil industry. We have the ability to pump a lot of oil, almost 20 million barrels per day here in the United States. What we lack, though, is refinery capacity, and we really need to build that up. So it's a combination of being strategic in terms of how we look at energy security, but at the same time punishing those, not just the Iranians that are supporting this stuff.
Do you think, you mentioned the refinery capacity, obviously, I don't know, are we building more of those? I mean, you would assume that the environmental left would be against all of that, right?
Well, that's exactly right. One of the things that we have an absolute abundance of here in the United States is natural gas. Now, the flex fuel vehicles, the E85 vehicles, actually can burn ethanol. You can take natural gas and turn it into ethanol, and it's a much cleaner fuel. We haven't built any of those types of facilities. So, yeah, in addition to the EPA being very hard for building a petroleum refinery, we could turn gas to liquid here in a big way in the United States. We just haven't made those kinds of investments.
We're talking with Brigadier General Robert S. Spaulding. He's retired from the United States Air Force, senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, also the author of this new book, Stealth War, How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept. Do you appreciate, let me ask you this, I mean, it seems to me that President Trump does not want to get involved in another conflict in the Middle East, or at least a prolonged one. I don't know, I'm not in his mind, but to me it seems like his foreign policy is more like, hey, listen, we're going to respond in kind to your threats, and we'll bomb you back to the Stone Age and come home. What are your thoughts on that? And are you weary of a potential drawn-out conflict in Iran?
I am, and I think the president's foreign policy really matches one of earlier time, Eisenhower. So Eisenhower was really about using the military for deterrence, so making sure you had a big stick in case you needed to use it, but not being interventionist. At the same time, he was about building the economy. So we built things like the Eisenhower National Highway System that contributed to economic growth here in the country. We need to invest in our infrastructure and industrial base, STEM education, research and development, all of that. The money that we have been spending in the Middle East is taken away from. They're all of historic lows, or really in infrastructure, we're $5 trillion in arrears. So while we spent trillions of dollars in the Middle East, our own country has been decaying, and I think the president wants to get to that, and what he understands is jobs and economic growth will come out of that.
I could not agree more with that
so
statement.
Offensive
That's very,
too,
very
right?
well said.
That's to the left.
Turning now to Hong Kong.
You kids.
All
right, welcome back, folks.
870-275-9799 is the telephone number. Some of your comment. I just got to read some of your comment. I mean, you guys, there's a very smart audience, and you guys are very well informed. Jeff on Facebook, there is no whistleblower. He's just a pawn of the deep state, and the Democrats, much like Papadopoulos was when he was handed a packet of information and told to release it. Adam Schiff has had the information since early August because he's been tweeting about bits and pieces of it. The whole thing is a coup orchestrated by the Democrats. So-called whistleblower complaint reads like a legal brief and was well thought out and orchestrated. face it, people, there are still Obama holdovers in this government, and they are feeding everything they hear or see back to the Democrats, and they have been doing this since day one. That's Jeff. It's pretty comprehensive. Let's see here. What else do we have? Dennis writing, extremely difficult for people in society so indoctrinated as ours to grasp the concept of a secret group of people controlling their government against the best interests of the people. The deep state or shadow government does exist. It's sometimes called the swamp. Our elected officials are just a false facade puppets. Interesting thing. I mean, yeah, I you know, it is what it is. I mean, the mainstream media is not going to editorialize it that way, but all you have to do is just from what I can tell, just observe with an open mind what actually takes place. Not what you're told to think, but the events, and put the events together, and then you have this picture. And, you know, we need to do this, obviously, on the federal level, but you got to do it on the state level, too. And that's what I'm trying to do. This piece over at Talk Business and Politics is frustrating to me, because honestly, I guess we're saying all of this on deaf ears. The mainstream media needs to start to. The mainstream media in Arkansas needs to start to ask the governor: is Donald Trump costing Arkansas jobs? Now, I don't believe that that's the case, but I'm just trying to put myself in their leftist, biased shoes when it comes to interpreting the news and events of the day. And you have a Republican governor who is trying to do 6 different deals with communist Chinese entities, bringing them to Arkansas. Now, we're not talking about trade with these countries. We're talking about bringing them here, where the FBI and CIA says they are a threat to us. Okay? And so he's got these deals cooking. And they're stuck in the pipeline because President Trump has taken such a strong pro-American stance against China. America first stance. And so because of that, these deals are frozen in the pipeline. And so you would think a journalist here in the state would start to ask Asa Hutchinson, are you at odds with Trump? Just do it more and more and more. Is Trump costing the state jobs? Because you would think these leftists would want to, use the governor, a Republican, as a way to make Trump look bad, because the mainstream media loves to do this. They love to take Republicans like Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan now, by the way. Have you heard about this real quick? Here's Paul Ryan, who is now on the board of Fox, is pushing Fox News to decisively break with Donald Trump. This story breaks as Mitt Romney's criticizing. I mean, I'm telling you, these guys are now caricatures of rhinos. And Donald Trump's mad, or Paul Ryan's mad at Trump because, Paul Ryan resigned. He quit. He didn't run for office again. And he's mad. He's mad at the American people for voting for Donald Trump. Anyway, back to this story here. Sun Paper, over at, this is, again, Talk Business and Politics, Wesley Brown. Sun Paper project still faces trade headwinds despite Arkansas permit. Earlier this week, go ahead, Joe, throw this up there. Earlier this week, we told you that the governor had announced, by the way, I think he's going to India. He's going to Dubai and then India. The United Arab Emirates, and then he's going to India. Looking for more jobs, I guess, overseas. Yeah. Yeah, this one right here. Yeah, that's right. So we find out that there was this big 574-page air permit that was finally approved by the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality. And that's not news. People act like that's news. It's really not news at all. In terms of being like a movement toward, there was no movement from China. I guess what I'm saying is, it's Governor Asa Hutchinson's own agency. It's his agency. It's not like his own agency is not going to give him a permit, a clean air permit or whatever, to build a factory with the Chinese, the communist China. You know what I mean? You know how weird that would be? if his own Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality denied him the construction permit? That would never happen, okay? So, but it was news, right? But so they follow up on this report. Despite leaping over a 574-page hurdle earlier this week, officials with Chinese paper goods giant Shandong Sun Paper say there is significant progress to be made in U.S.-China trade talks before construction can begin. Okay. Now, I thought we were going to have construction sometime next year. That's what the governor said, I think, in the couple reports ago, maybe 2 months ago. Let's see here. Asa Hutchinson told reporters Monday that the State Department of Environmental Quality had finally approved an air permit. Finally! We didn't know if they were going to do it. If there's no appeal of ADEQ permit approval, the next step on... Can the public appeal it? If there's no appeal on the ADEQ, somebody should appeal this thing. Let's say, even if you're not an environmentalist, just do it for the good of America to try to stop this ridiculous nonsense. Folks, I don't think this plant's ever going to be built. But if it is, it will be bad for the country and bad for Arkansas. Period. Maybe if anybody out there listening, maybe there needs to be somebody that files a complaint, go research a bunch of far leftist climate change buzzwords to try to stop this thing from going forward. Anyway, I mean, this is what the left would do. Well, why not us? But do it, your actual goal is that you disagree. Maybe even just put that in the complaint. Well, I'm really doing this because I just doing everything legally we can. Because I disagree with bringing or doing direct business in the state of Arkansas with the Communist Party of China that has machines where they take dissidents and keep them alive so they can harvest people's organs. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen over here. What I am saying is this country is bonkers, man. They are not benign. They are communists. And they lull countries to sleep. They go in and they grease politicians before the initial legal work gets done. Why would they treat Arkansas any different, by the way? Because they do it everywhere else. Right now we're playing on the break, General Spalding during the online breaks. General Spalding we had on earlier in the week where he detailed this. He's from the Hudson Institute. The Hudson Institute is the same think tank where Vice President Mike Pence went a year or so ago and laid out how dangerous China is, how they're infiltrating local governments, how they're infiltrating movie studios, how they are infiltrating every aspect of our lives slowly. Congressman Rick Crawford from Arkansas has been on here and told us of the dangers of economic development, how it's with the Chinese, how it's a Trojan horse. And even to hurt the president agriculturally with farmers, the Chinese government, they're putting buying editorials and putting them in agricultural publications, right? Some of these ag magazines need to say no. No, we're not, have your political views, but no, we're not going to allow the communists to manipulate us with their propaganda. And Arkansas's leadership continues to want to do business with these people. And I don't know what it would take for them to just say, you know what, we were wrong. China is not just like some other. China is not it's not like there's some sort of Western civilization country. It's not the same thing, man. They're not free. They're not free. I got news for you. They are not for a free society. If there's an investor that's looking into investing in Arkansas, man, he's an investor because the Chinese government said, you know what, you get to be an investor. Well, you can be an investor. You're from the right family. You got the right blood. Oh, no. They still look at market forces. No. They don't look at market forces. The Chinese government, they are willing to lose billions of dollars just so they can get their foothold in. Because the technology transfers and the technology theft is worth way more. You got to look at this as like an investment. Well, let's see. I'll invest $1.1 billion in Arkadelphia. We'll rename it Chinadelphia. And while we're there, we're probably going to steal about $5 billion worth of technology from the Americans. Yeah, that's a pretty good investment. Has there even been anybody in Arkansas's leadership, the governor's mansion? I mean, has anybody even thought of this? Why isn't there a reporter that would at least ask Asa Hutchinson, hey, Asa, have you talked to the FBI about the safety of doing business with the communist Chinese? Have you called me like, hey, do I need to be worried about anything here? I mean, the FBI says they got 50 investigations, or they have investigations in all 50 states about Chinese involvement in our country. I just don't understand. Like, what is going on? And we still have these articles that are saying, no, we're still going to do business with China, and the Arkansas people are just supposed to. Are we supposed to ignore that this is a blatant contradictory situation in regards to what our national security policy right now is towards China? I don't know, man. Like I'm telling you. I mean, the only thing that we can do is just continue to talk about it. Listen to some of these quotes here in this. Scroll down here. Let's see if there's no appeal. Now here's CEO of Deltic Timber Corp. The U.S.-China trade dispute is a significant hurdle to be overcome before substantial progress can be made. Dillon, the former CEO of Deltic Timber Corp and Sun Bio spokesman, said in a response to a Talk Business and Politics inquiry, quote, no construction date has been established at this time. Then there's this quote from the governor. While there is friction between our two countries at the highest level, when it comes to the people to people, business to business level, there is a positive relationship and recognition that our economies benefit each other. Huh. People to people, huh? People to people. Yeah. I know, I mean, what do you think that means? What do you guys think that means? People to, well, yeah, there's a big deal, between our two countries, mano y mano, but when you actually get to the people to people level, it's much more friendly. Huh. Okay. I want to remind you one more time that when China goes into a country, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, anywhere, first thing they do is they grease politicians in some way, shape, or form. They pay them some way, shape, or form. And I'm sure I'm sure at some point you got to talk, to an individual person for that to happen. Yeah, I know what I'm insinuating. I don't care anymore. I mean, somebody's got to say it, right? Somebody's got to say it. It doesn't make any sense to be doing this. If we had 6 Russian companies coming here and that were in the pipeline, people would be losing their minds, and yet China is a much larger threat to us than Russia. If these were Saudi Arabian companies, people would be like, Wahhabism, hello? Yeah, we can trade with these guys, but do we really want to be bringing them in our country? Do we really want to be giving them taxpayer incentives? No, everybody. It would be universal. But for some reason, China has done such a good job at go read Secret Empires, at buying the children of American politicians. Hunter Biden, John Kerry's stepson, and Whitey Bulger's nephew in the China deal. When this Ukraine situation is over, let's do China next. And what does that mean? What will that mean for Arkansas? Folks, there's a double standard going on right now. Somebody just needs to start asking some questions other than me.
Can we start a ballot initiative to keep China out
That'd be great. Joe suggests a ballot initiative to keep China out of Arkansas. Oh, yeah, you could write it up. Yeah, I mean, in some way, like there'd be a way to do it. We'd have to talk to legal minds that are far more sophisticated than ours. Let's see here. What else do we have? Now, here's another quote from Asa, okay, in this Talk Business and Politics article. Quote, as governor, whether you are talking about Walmart or Tyson or you are talking about Arkansas rice, we want to keep that market open. Stop. Okay. Well, yeah, this is not about that, though. This isn't about trading with China. This is about essentially embracing communist ideology. Seriously, it is. It really is. This is about giving credibility to a government that's trying to take the freedoms away from the citizens in Hong Kong. It's one thing to trade. It's a whole nother ballgame when you are welcoming them in to your country to establish companies to use our resources here in Arkansas and send the profits back home and also provide Arkansas taxpayer incentives to these companies. No. We want them to come over here and make money so that they can buy more machines that keep dissidents alive while they sell their organs. There is now a black market elite organ selling ring where you can, if you're connected enough, if you're wealthy enough, you can fly to China and schedule your heart transplant surgery. It's going on right now. Why would we do business with the Chinese, with this country? Why would we do it? And they just act like everything's like normal. Like they're just like us. I mean, they're human beings, and that's how they're just like us. But in terms of their philosophy and ideology and their type of government, I'll go a step further. I don't think it's compatible with the United States Constitution. That's a no-brainer. You think that they're benign. Maybe you don't think that they're benign. Maybe you just don't care. Quote, some of the Chinese businesses feel a lack of confidence whether to continue to make full investment. Hang on a second. Way. Okay, listen to this. At the same meeting with Hutchinson at the governor's mansion, Chinese Consul General Kai Wei said during an interview with Talk Business and Politics, he will return to China soon to share with business investors that Arkansas is open for business despite ongoing trade frictions. Quote, some of the Chinese businesses feel a lack of confidence whether to continue to make full investment, Wei said, not mentioning Sun Paper and other Arkansas projects. Quote, of course, this has nothing to do with state government, but it has to do with the federal involvement. From us, we try to give the true Arkansas feelings. We will give them the new story about the people of Arkansas and encourage them, and that's my job. So we have Chinese consuls coming to Arkansas and then promising to deliver messages back home to China that, well, we're not unified with what Trump is doing. We're not unified. We Trump doesn't like China. Oh, but Arkansas, we like China. Well, make sure you tell them we like China. We're ready. This is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. What is going on? And the Shandong province, right? Carter Heavy Industries at gmail.com. That was the email address that Hillary Clinton's emails were being forwarded to. Carter Heavy Industries is a company located in the Shandong province in China. Again, you'd think there'd at least be some Arkansas journalists that would start to ask those kind of questions as well, right? Nothing to see here. It's Johnny Cash Friday. We've got State Representative Brant Smith coming up at 7:33. You're going to talk to the Arkansas School for Math Science, the new, what's going on with that scandal. Also, Gregory Wrightstone on this big week for climate change, even though it's turned into a big week exposing the CIA as attempting, once again, to remove a sitting president of the United States. Back in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work that we're doing here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Go to conduitforcommerce.org right now.
Flex fuel vehicles, E85 vehicles, actually can burn ethanol. You can take natural gas and turn it into ethanol, and it's a much cleaner fuel. We haven't built any of those types of facilities. So, yeah, in addition to the EPA being very hard for building a petroleum refinery, we could turn gas to liquid here in a big way in the United States. We just haven't made those kinds of investments.
We're talking with Brigadier General Robert S. Spalding. He's retired from the United States Air Force, senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, also the author of this new book, Stealth War, How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept. Do you appreciate, let me ask you this, I mean, it seems to me that President Trump does not want to get involved in another conflict in the Middle East, or at least a prolonged one. I mean, I don't know. I'm not in his mind, but to me, it seems like his foreign policy is more like, hey, listen, you know, we're going to respond in kind to your threats, and we'll bomb you back to the Stone Age and come home. What are your thoughts on that? And are you weary of a potential drawn-out conflict in Iran?
I am, and I think the president's foreign policy really matches one of earlier time, Eisenhower. So Eisenhower was really about using the military for deterrence, so making sure you had a big stick in case you needed to use it, but not being interventionist. At the same time, he was about building the economy. So we built things like the Eisenhower National Highway System that contributed to economic growth here in the country. We need to invest in our infrastructure and industrial base, STEM education, research and development, all of that. The money that we have been spending in the Middle East is taken away from. They're all of historic lows, or really in infrastructure, we're $5 trillion in arrears. So while we spent trillions of dollars in the Middle East, our own country has been decaying. And I think the president wants to get to that. And what he understands is jobs and economic growth will come out of that.
I could not agree more with that statement. It's very, very well said. Turning now to Hong Kong. What are your thoughts about what's going on in Hong Kong? I mean, to me, it's refreshing that the American flag to people over there means freedom of speech. It means liberty. And while we may be burning it over here, some of us, over there, it's a symbol of hope. What are your thoughts on Hong Kong? What should be done?
Well, I think finally we're beginning to see what the Chinese Communist Party really is, and the kinds of things that they do. You know, I try to tell people that, you know, they have these machines where they keep bodies alive, dissidents, religious dissidents that are essentially sentenced to prison in China, and then they harvest organs.
So I just thought I would say this. Hillary Clinton's emails for the Epic Times. We got about a minute left. I just want to remind everybody this. Hillary Clinton's emails were sent to a Gmail address similar to the names of Chinese companies. All but 4 of the 30,490 emails from Hillary Clinton's unauthorized email server were forwarded to a private Google email address featuring a name similar to a Chinese company located in the Shandong province. All of our companies here in Arkansas, we're trying to do business with, are in the Shandong province. Now, listen, I mean, that's just unfortunate circumstances, or maybe just a coincidence, or, I mean, I don't know. You tell me, what does this look like? Also, really interesting situation with Walmart. I saw that, well, we're out of time. More on healthcare and Walmart
Eisenhower. So Eisenhower was really about using the military for deterrence. So making sure you had a big stick in case you needed to use it, but not being interventionist. At the same time, he was about building the economy. So we built things like the Eisenhower National Highway System that contributed to economic growth here in the country. We need to invest in our infrastructure and industrial base, STEM education, research and development, all of that. The money that we have been spending in the Middle East is taken away from. They're all of historic lows, or really in infrastructure, we're $5 trillion in arrears. So while we spent trillions of dollars in the Middle East, our own country has been decaying, and I think the president wants to get to that, and what he understands is jobs and economic growth will come out of that.
I could not agree more with that statement. It's very, very well said. Turning now to Hong Kong, what are your thoughts about what's going on in Hong Kong? I mean, to me, it's refreshing that the American flag to people over there means freedom of speech. It means liberty. And while we may be burning it over here, some of us, over there, it's a symbol of hope. What are your thoughts on Hong Kong? What should be done?
Well, I think finally we're beginning to see what the Chinese Communist Party really is and the kinds of things that they do. You know, I try to tell people that, you know, they have these machines where they keep bodies alive, dissidents, religious dissidents that are essentially sentenced to prison in China, and then they harvest organs for them. So you can right now schedule a heart transplant next month because they'll be guaranteed to pull one for you. That's the kind of regime that we're dealing with, and finally, for the first time, people are beginning to wake up, and it's primarily because of the kids in Hong Kong are standing up for their own freedom.
Hang on. I would just like for you to repeat that for us. You're telling me that there are, like, machines that keep dissidents alive, and then they go and they harvest their organs.
That's exactly right. And so the first country, and the only country, by the way, to ban travel to China for organ harvesting was Israel. A heart surgeon over there realized what was going on because one of his patients said, "Hey, I'm going next month to get a heart transplant." He said, "How can you schedule it?" And so he did some investigation and found out, yeah, they were taking dissidents, essentially taking their organs and killing them, and they created an industry out of it. I just don't think people understand what the regime is capable of.
So you're telling me that we have elites across the world that are going to China, scheduling these organ transplants because they know that there's essentially a human organ harvesting farm over there. And it reminds me of that movie The Island with Ewan McGregor, where they've got clones. You know?
Yeah, it's terrible, but I mean, there was an independent inquiry done in the UK. There's a lot of people have come forward, surgeons, people that have experienced this. They understand what's going on. Of course, the Chinese Communist Party just does a great job of hiding things, and all the information's there. The mainstream media just hasn't portrayed it because, you know, the Chinese Communist Party has huge sway in the United States and elsewhere, and that's what the book's about. It's really talking about how they've influenced us to consider them to be something other than what they are, which is really a horrible regime.
And then you've got the current president of China, you know, who's essentially changed the rules, and now he's going to be the leader for life. Which, I mean, it reminds me of Mao. Are there similarities between President Xi Jinping and Mao, in your opinion?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, he gave a speech just a few weeks ago where he mentioned the word struggle 60 times. They haven't used that word since Mao. And so it evoked for many of the Chinese the Cultural Revolution, which was a horrible time when many people were killed, many people were forced into these gulags where they were brainwashed. And so the China that I lived in from 2002 to 2004 has taken a turn for the worse. Of course, the Chinese Communist Party hasn't changed their nature. They've just become more visible. And again, thanks to the kids in Hong Kong for forcing them to show their hand.
Can I ask you about foreign investment? I think we talked about this a little bit last time, but, you know, the Chinese government, they go into countries and they They want mineral rights. They want they promise jobs. In my home state of Arkansas, we have 6 Chinese companies that are supposed to come here at some point in the future. All that is kind of tied up and on hold because of the trade war. I've talked to people that think it's a Trojan horse. Do you kind of feel the same way? What are your thoughts?
I think it's time we ask
they're a
ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers.
They can interject billions of dollars.
They seem to be in
full-scale
retreat from spending.
Yeah, in
cuts.
fact, they create these owners loan terms that nobody really knows.
And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, folks, hey, welcome back to the program. And it's been an exciting week in terms of the climate change world. And we wanted to bring in our friend, geologist, author of Inconvenient Facts, the science Al Gore doesn't want you to know about, Gregory Wrightstone is back with us. Gregory, how are you, sir?
Really good. You're right. Things are getting crazier, it seems, by the day on the climate change front.
I mean, it really is, and obviously the highlight this time was Greta Thunberg, and her saying things like "How dare you?" What was your thought about what she said at the United Nations?
Well, there's so many ways to look at it. I don't want to be. Well, number one, she's not a little girl. She's a young woman. She's 16 years old. They dress her up to look like she's 12. Mm-hmm. One of the things to note here, too, she's from Sweden, and for the most of the part when she's been talking, they put her in pigtails, and she's a drop-dead ringer for Pippi Longstockings, which was huge in Sweden. And if you don't know the story of Pippi Longstockings, it's this 12-year-old girl that's wise beyond her years and lectures her elders who are doing wrong, and she knows much better than them. So I don't think this is by accident. Again, Pippi Longstockings, I don't recall what the name is in Swedish, but it's a popular figure over there and has been for many years. So we've got this girl now that's 16, dressed up to look much younger, and again, she's apparently wise beyond her years and are lecturing her elders. But what she's saying just isn't backed up by science, fact, or data. It's not so much. And I had written an article here, a commentary, a couple of months ago about her, and in it I said that she needs to go back to school because there's a lot about climate change she does not know, and that's not the dangerous part. The dangerous part with her and AOC and so many of those just like her that are promoting this notion of a catastrophic man-made warming, it's what she thinks she knows is just not so.
Yeah.
What she thinks she knows is factually incorrect. And, in fact, I'm in the middle of writing a commentary today, right now. It's no Greta. Mass extinctions are not occurring. The Earth is thriving. Because that was she stated, and she was pretty irate about that we're going into this 6th mass extinction. And it could be nothing could be more wrong than that. We're doing a great job preserving species. And in fact, what we see, she was referring to a UN study that was issued about a month and a half ago that I debunked. And in that study, they reported that there would be 1 million species going extinct over the next several decades. Well, to have that happen, you need 25,000 to 30,000 species going extinct each and every year. I went back and looked at the exact same data on a decade-by-decade basis rather than the century basis the report did, and I found that species extinctions peaked in the late 1800s, and they've been in significant decline ever since. They're saying 25,000 to 30,000 extinctions per year, and that's what she's referencing Well, you know what the average has been the last 40 years? It's been 2. 2 extinctions per year of species. Not 30,000, not 25,000. And they've got it just wrong. We're doing a really good job protecting animals and plants on Earth. And again, that's just one example of what she has wrong.
I mean,
and
she said she had that one part though where she was like, entire ecosystems are being destroyed, and I'm just thinking, really? And also,
no.
Saying that the science is crystal clear for 30 years. That's another quote, and I just wanted to look at her and be like, you think 30 years is a long time? I mean, she's 16 years old, so she thinks 30 years is forever, and that's not even if she was right, that's not a very long time.
No, she's got to just actually, I'm giving a talk at a church in the nearby area, and the title is tomorrow morning at a men's breakfast, Climate Change, a Contrarian View of a Thriving Planet. And that's what I find. I find that the Earth and its ecosystems are thriving, prospering, and greening, and humanity is benefiting because of it. What they want to do is destine billions of people around the Earth to continuing generational poverty. I'm just looking in some, and I'm adding some things here today. And if we look at, there are around, the numbers are unclear, but it's probably over 1 billion people today. They say 4 billion people living in energy poverty, over 1 billion people cooking over open wood and dried dung. And these lead to, according to the studies, that's 4 million deaths, lung-related deaths per year, mostly women, from indoor cooking and using dried dung and wood to cook over inside their homes, leading to huge numbers of cataracts. I'm looking at a picture here from a woman from Nepal, and she's 35 years old and has cataracts. Well, you don't get, her name is Sanhar Kanchi from Nepal, 35 years old with cataracts, and that's because she doesn't have access to energy forms other than this dried dung. And what they can all benefit, those are 4 million deaths that are easily preventable by providing reliable, abundant, and affordable energy to these people. If this Miss Conchi had access to electricity or propane or compressed natural gas, she wouldn't have had cataracts. She wouldn't die an early death. But that's what people like Greta Thunberg and AOC want. I don't think it's intentional. They just don't know. Forgive me, but they're ignorant about the climate, what's really driving our changing climate, and they're ignorant about the negative effects of moving away from fossil fuels. We see huge benefits from, and again in my talk tomorrow, I'm showing a direct correlation between CO2 emissions and prosperity. We compare that. Now, by prosperity, I'm defining prosperity as GDP per capita.
Yeah.
And it's just a strong relationship there. And we see that, again, if we relate carbon dioxide emissions to life expectancy, there's a strong correlation there. So, no, we've lifted billions of people already around the world up out of a generational poverty, and we can do more with more of it.
We're talking with Gregory Wrightstone, again, geologist, also author of the book Inconvenient Facts, the Science That Al Gore Doesn't Want You to Know. Now, I have pulled up on my phone, I'm going to show the folks here, I have the app pulled up on my phone, so you can download that app, and it's, really convenient, especially if you are in a conversation, with somebody that doesn't know what they're talking about with climate change. One of the things that Greta Thunberg also said was we've got to abandon this idea of eternal economic growth. I have a theory on that, but what was your response to that?
Well, the one thing I'm talking to you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I went to the Pittsburgh climate strike protest on Friday of last week.
Wow.
And what I saw, a couple things that jumped out at me. And one of the ones was this strong relationship between so many people that were anti-capitalist, pro-socialist, this is a strong element of this Green New Deal, and is pushing it. is we need to tear down the system. Extinction Rebellion was a partner in this, and the founder of Extinction Rebellion just says, we're not, he didn't say he didn't care about climate change, but he says climate change we're using as a tool to advance our ideas, and his ideas are that we need to have system failure for all the Western democracies and have it replaced with his vision of what societies should look like. So this is it's a dangerous push that's anti-capitalist, anti-socialist, and they're very proud of it.
So,
and that's what it is.
So I completely agree with you, but this is where I think it's different than when socialism's been tried in the past. In the past, socialism is sold, and they're still doing this, but it's sold as things will be better because capitalism is leaving people behind. Things will be better. But in this context, you've got these people who are so committed to self-preservation because they think the world's going to end in 12 years. They are incentivized to do with less. So normally it's socialism that causes the misery. But when you have a population that's willing to have economic shrinkage and less convenience because they somehow have been brainwashed to think that they have to do the socialistic I think that's kind of diabolical. You're getting your population to want to be subjugated, and socialism doesn't get the blame because they're voluntarily trying to, quote, save the planet, Yeah,
I saw a lot of signs that said system change, not climate change. That was a popular sign. It's sad. It's discouraging, but I got to tell you, in some ways I'm optimistic because I travel around the country, and the guy or woman next to you in the seat, that's just a random person. You've no control over that. And as I travel around, it's just amazing. I've never talked to anybody that was not anything but thirsty for unbiased, unfiltered science and information about climate change and what's really happening. Because I think most people realize that they experience a barrage of just one climate apocalypse after another. Each day it's something new. It's increased in poison ivy, toenail fungus, you name it. I mean, it's crazy, and it's every day. And I think people, they're not stupid. And I think your listeners realize that they're getting bamboozled and lied to, and they really are. It's the climate lies that need to be exposed, and that's my mission when I wrote Inconvenient Facts and now with the app, because I want to empower people with the information. Because I didn't set out, and I got to tell you, it's been incredible what's happened. The book today is the #1 bestseller on Amazon in 3 categories.
Wow!
After 2 years, because people are just, isn't that something? I'm blown away, and it's because people are talking about it and recommending it to others. Because we've not had a big marketing campaign or any marketing campaign other than by word of mouth.
Yeah.
So, thank you to you and to your listeners that have supported me in my mission.
Well,
and again, the smartphone app is just part of this rollout of empowering your listeners with the information.
Well, we have a word that's we've been using all week this week. It's called pedophrasty. Some people think it's a made-up word. I don't know. It may have been made up, but as early as 2009. It's when you use kids to bolster your argument so that people are less skeptical because they don't want to be against the children. And so that's clearly what's going on here. And I know you said, she's a young lady. She's 16. She is. But I don't know. Is there a chance 10 years from now she looks back and she says, hey, I was exploited, I mean,
Nope.
It's almost child abuse,
Nope.
You don't think so?
She will not be. No. Well, I guess it's possible. I think it's highly unlikely that she'll be. I mean, this is her claim to fame now.
That's true.
For her to go back on that, I mean, it's really tough. And that's why we see some of these climate scientists that may now realize that they're wrong. But if you've spent 10 or 15 years promoting what's turning out to be a flawed notion, you're pretty well invested in making sure that you want to advance that same failed notion and agenda. So it's hard to say for anybody to say I'm wrong, isn't it?
Yeah, no, you're
I mean,
right.
You may say it to your wife, but maybe not mean it. And but it's really tough for people to say, everything I believed in for the last 10 or 20 or 30 years is just not correct. You're not going to do it, and it's just human nature for people.
Yeah.
And especially with her, with worldwide fame now, and she's got. I had an interview yesterday with a psychiatrist out of Hollywood. She was called the psychiatrist to the stars, and we were talking about that. And she said that a fellow in Laura Ingram's program got in trouble because he called this girl mentally ill. And according to her, she's a psychiatrist. She goes, well, she is. She goes, by every definition, as a psychiatrist, she has Asperger's. She's got, she went through this litany of things that admittedly this girl has wrong with her. And she says, but you can't, these are seen as attacks on children. But by the definition from this psychiatrist, she goes, she has obsessive compulsive disorders, functioning autism, things like that. I think there were 4 different things. But Michael Knowles got vilified for calling her mentally ill. And he says, well, that's because people, when you think about mentally ill, you think about Jack Nicholson and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And he says, it's not really like that. And,
well, I mean, you can't. You certainly. That's why they use young people anyway. So you can't criticize their ideas that are about socialism and more power, more control, less freedom. Gregory Wrightstone, it's always great to talk to you, sir. Keep up the good work. Good luck tomorrow at the breakfast, and keep getting that information out there. And we want to keep helping you because it really is a scam, and you have the facts, you got the truth. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All righty, we'll talk to you soon, folks. We're going to take a break. Back in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work that we're doing here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Go to conduitforcommerce.org right now.
And travel to China for organ harvesting was Israel. Heart surgeon over there realized what was going on because one of his patients said, hey, I'm going next month to get a heart transplant. He said, how can you schedule it? And so he did some investigation and found out, they were taking dissidents, essentially taking their organs and killing them. And they've created an industry out of it. I just don't think people understand what the regime is capable of.
So you're telling me that we have elites across the world that are going to China, scheduling these organ transplants because they know that there's essentially a human organ harvesting farm over there. And it reminds me of that movie The Island with Ewan McGregor, where they've got clones.
Yeah, it's terrible. But I mean, there was an independent inquiry done in the UK. There's a lot of people have come forward, surgeons, people that have experienced this. They understand what's going on. Of course, the Chinese Communist Party just does a great job of hiding things, and all the information's there. The mainstream media just hasn't portrayed it because the Chinese Communist Party has huge sway in the United States and elsewhere, and that's what the book's about. It's really talking about how they've influenced us to consider them to be something other than what they are, which is really a horrible regime.
And then you've got the current president of China, who's essentially changed the rules, and now he's going to be the leader for life. Which, I mean, it reminds me of Mao. Are there similarities between President Xi Jinping and Mao, in your opinion?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, he gave a speech just a few weeks ago where he mentioned the word struggle 60 times. They haven't used that word since Mao. And so it evokes for many of the Chinese the Cultural Revolution, which was a horrible time when many people were killed, many people were forced into these gulags where they were brainwashed. And so the China that I lived in from 2002 to 2004 has taken a turn for the worse. Of course, the Chinese Communist Party hasn't changed their nature. They've just become more visible. And again, thanks to the kids in Hong Kong for forcing them to show their hand.
Can I ask you about foreign investment? I think we talked about this a little bit last time, but the Chinese government, they go into countries and they want mineral rights. They want they promise jobs. In my home state of Arkansas, we have 6 Chinese companies that are supposed to come here at some point in the future. All that is kind of tied up and on hold because of the trade war. I've talked to people that think it's a Trojan horse. Do you kind of feel the same way? What are your thoughts on how they're a developing nation under World Trade Organization rules, and yet they can interject billions of dollars into these other countries?
Yeah, in fact, they create these onerous loan terms that nobody really knows because they're all done in secret, and usually it involves paying somebody off. But I think that the most egregious thing for Americans is if they're coming to America to invest money, it's because they've taken money out of Americans' retirement funds. So right now, Wall Street is sending money from our retirement funds over to China. And what they do is turn around and come back and buy some strategic piece of technology or property here in the United States with our own funds. And of course, you'll never see that money again because, the auditing and the transparency requirements within the country is absolutely doesn't follow any convention here in the West. So, I mean, it's really, they really are clever in the way they do things, and we have been just absolutely rated.
Okay, that's huge news about this. Essentially, it's a cycle, coming from America to China, then back into America. Again, we're talking with Brigadier General Robert S. Spalding, Senior Fellow at the Hudson Institute. All right, folks, welcome back. It is just Johnny Cash Friday. Coming up, we got State Representative Brant Smith. He's in studio. We're going to talk to him about an interesting story. Well, maybe get an Arkansas School of Math and Science update because that's been, remember the privilege walk that they were making kids do? Take one step forward if you come from a 2-parent home. Take one step backward if you come from a single-parent home, that sort of thing, and it's just very strange stuff. So we'll talk to him about that, get an update on it. Also, an interesting story. I think, well, you'll have to tell the story, but he's got a friend that he surfed with in Iraq who's running against. Who's he running against? Ilhan Omar. Okay, all right, and that's that'll be really, really interesting. The telephone number 870-275-9799. We have a meme of the day coming your way around 7:50. That's pretty good, and it connects with the segment that you just heard. And we want to thank Gregory Wrightstone for coming on the program. That was really interesting. But when she said that her childhood had been stolen, that is what the meme of the day is. I'm not ruining it. I'm not gonna tell you what it is. We've got a pretty funny meme of the day coming your way. Hey, this headline is interesting from the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette that down in South Arkansas, they're contemplating putting in private prisons, for-profit prisons. So that's sure going to drive the left nuts there. Also, interesting story about Sam's Club is going to start offering health care services. This was interesting. Sam's Club to test offering bundles of health services. But this is what's odd to me, but not in Arkansas. They're not going to do it in Arkansas. They're going to test it in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. Now, it's got the potential to expand nationwide. Members who shoulder a higher burden of healthcare costs, like small business owners or those with high deductible plans, will, are basically their target, target consumer here. But I wonder why we need it. My question is, why wouldn't we start this here in Arkansas? Because it seems like it might be, a good thing. Also, at the same time, though, I will remind you, I did have a guy once tell me, dude, eventually Walmart will just do everything for you. Like, Walmart will be, where you go for everything, and it'll be the only thing to do. Doctor, tires, pharmacy, optometrist. Back in just a moment.
And what's going on? Of course, the Chinese Communist Party does a great job of hiding things, and all the information's there. The mainstream media just hasn't portrayed it because the Chinese Communist Party has huge sway in the United States and elsewhere, and that's what the book's about. It's really talking about how they've influenced us to consider them to be something other than what they are, which is really a horrible regime.
And then you've got the current president of China, who's essentially changed the rules, and now he's going to be the leader for life. Which, I mean, it reminds me of Mao. Are there similarities between President Xi Jinping and Mao, in your opinion?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, he gave a speech just a few weeks ago where he mentioned the word struggle 60 times. They haven't used that word since Mao. And so it evoked for many of the Chinese the Cultural Revolution, which was a horrible time when many people were killed, many people were forced into these gulags where they were brainwashed. And so the China that I lived in from 2002 to 2004 has taken a turn for the worse. Of course, the Chinese Communist Party hasn't changed their nature. They've just become more visible. And again, thanks to the kids in Hong Kong for forcing them to show their hand.
Can I ask you about foreign investment? I think we talked about this a little bit last time, but the Chinese government, they go into countries and they want mineral rights. They want they promise jobs. In my home state of Arkansas, we have 6 Chinese companies that are supposed to come here at some point in the future. All that is kind of tied up and on hold because of the trade war. I've talked to people that think it's a Trojan horse. Do you kind of feel the same way? What are your thoughts on how they're a developing nation under World Trade Organization rules, and yet they can interject billions of dollars into these other countries?
Yeah, in fact, they create these onerous loan terms that nobody really knows because they're all done in secret, and usually it involves paying somebody off. But I think that the most egregious thing for Americans is if they're coming to America to invest money, it's because they've taken money out of Americans' retirement funds. So right now, Wall Street is sending money from our retirement funds over to China. And what they do is turn around and come back and buy some strategic piece of technology or property here in the United States with our own funds. And of course, you'll never see that money again because the auditing and the transparency requirements within the country is absolutely doesn't follow any convention here in the West. So, I mean, it's really they really are clever in the way they do things, and we have been just absolutely rated.
Okay, that's huge news about this. Essentially, it's a cycle coming from America to China, then back into America. Again, we're talking with Brigadier General Robert S. Spalding, Senior Fellow at the Hudson Institute, author of this book, Stealth War. And you need to check it out, How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept. Real quick before we go, I'd like to get your thoughts on what's going on with the Ukraine. And, I think there's a lot of people now that are really becoming aware of what Vice President Joe Biden did. Of course, the media is trying to say this is not a Biden story, it's a Trump story. But then what about China? Because if you start looking into China and Biden and his son Hunter, and then John Kerry's stepson, and apparently Whitey Bulger's nephew, what's your reaction to all of that?
Well, so the dirty secret here in D.C. is that this is what people have been doing, and it really is, again, about the book. It's about Americans selling out America for their own greed, and this thing with Biden's son is no different.
I really appreciate it, General Here we go. Robert Spalding. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us. And we got your meme of the day again coming up here after our next break. Welcome back to the program. We got State Representative Brant Smith is with us. Brant, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Paul. Thank you for having me today.
It's always great to have you. Last time I think we had you on, we talked about the Arkansas School for Math and Science and the Arts. I want to get into that, but first,
okay.
You're running a 4th term, right?
Yes, sir. I'm announcing that that's the plan, to run for another term in the State House.
Nice. And how do you think? How do you think things have been going? I mean, you know, it'll be a 4th term for you, right?
Right.
And you know, you were this time, you know, you were the whip, correct?
Right, and I'm considering running again for House Majority Whip, but if I do that, it cuts me out of being eligible because of time constraints for chairing or co-chairing committees. So I've got a lot of, you know, things to consider.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that now.
Interesting. Okay, so can you give us an update? Because I know you and legislators, you name the legislators that you've been working with, investigating the Arkansas School for Math and Science down in Hot Springs. Some strange stuff like a privilege walk and really progressive indoctrination that appears to have been going on.
Well, yeah, that's it's ongoing. Did meet with Dr. Bobbitt of University of Arkansas and his legal counsel, Melissa Rusk, this week. And that meeting was held in Little Rock at the Capitol, 4th floor conference room on the House side. We had Senator Clark, Senator Mark Johnson. We had Representative Gazaway, Mark Lowry, and I sat down for a little over 2 hours with them. And one of the first questions I had was about that privilege walk, and Dr. Bobbitt did say that's gone. It may be appropriate for college level students, but it's inappropriate for high school students. And I agreed with that. I felt like it was more divisive than anything. And, you know, children don't need to be placed in a position where they feel just because they're in a 2-parent family, or they have books in their home, or they have a car, or several other things, that they are privileged to the point that it separates them from the student body. And so that's gone. And that was a major thing. And then, well, let me tell you this, another thing, there were concerns about young Republicans at the school not being allowed to have a club. Yesterday, received a text from one of my constituents saying that the students now have a Young Republicans Club on the campus of ASMSA, and that more than right at 50 students signed up.
Wow.
And see, the allegation or the comment from the school was, you don't have a sponsor, you don't have enough interest, there's not enough students that want to do it. Well, when you look at the student body size, roughly 230, 240, and 50 kids sign up to be a part of the Young Republicans Club, that's huge.
Yeah.
And so I commented back to the constituent, make sure they get their application completed and turned in by the due date. And they said they've already done that and they're approved.
Wow.
So we now have that checked off.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I want to remind everybody the privilege walk, though, was something that was not a voluntary thing, correct? I mean, it was.
No, they lined up all of the incoming juniors, I guess, and this year they've added 5 or 6 10th graders as a test, a pilot, program to see how well they would do in a dormitory, type setting. But yeah, they were forced to do it, and it was demoralizing to a lot of the children.
Well, no doubt. I mean, it's a progressive concept. This idea that we're trying to pursue equality of outcome, and so if we're going to pursue equality of outcome, we got to understand who's got advantages, and that's the thing is like we're equal under the law. But yeah, there are people born with different talents. There are people born into different circumstances.
Right.
I mean, the whole school itself is for very smart kids. That's
right.
why this thing is. That's why this is so. It was so hypocritical for them to do this because these guys are already the cream of the crop.
Well, and a lot of these students do go on to receive scholarships from some of our Ivy League schools. Some of them enter our military academies. So I'm proud of that for their sake. But a lot of the parents were concerned that this has simply become an indoctrination site to change the foundational principles or truths that these children have been reared in at their home back in their districts. And we're just going to hold the school more accountable. And one comment that Dr. Bobbitt did make that I did not think was very well stated, made the comment about the visitors board meeting back in May of this year, how that some of the parents who stood up to speak on behalf of their children that were the unsophisticated parents.
Okay.
And I thought, how can a parent, conceive, birth, and rear a child that is borderline or genius level? How can these parents be called unsophisticated? Looks to me like they did something right. And it could be that all the stars aligned, and it was a freak accident, but I doubt that.
Well, I think that's really, I would say that's really going to the point of people in positions of authority don't like to have that authority questioned. And, a parent, it doesn't matter if you're a teacher, and the parent is always going to think that they have more authority over their child and want to stand up for it. And a lot of times you don't like that.
The thing is, I have a PhD. I earned it, wrote my dissertation, did my field research in a combat environment. So I've been around.
So should we change the logo here to Dr. State Representative? Dr.
Brant Smith, State Legislator.
Oh, okay.
Well, there's so many titles, but my favorite one is Pawpaw. Okay.
Okay.
But the point I want to make is I've been around academics. There are hundreds or thousands of humble academics, professors that love their students and want them to learn how to maybe conduct research or field research, whether it's quantitative or qualitative, methodologies. But there are others who, once they get that PhD, they feel like they're God's gift to the planet. And I don't like being around those people. The only difference, and someone said to me, well, PhD stands for piled higher and deeper. And I just think we have to treat everyone with value, whether they have a GED or they have a bachelor's degree or nothing. And that's always the way I've tried to live my life.
We're talking with State Representative Brant Smith. He has announced he's running for a fourth term. We're talking about the Arkansas School for Math and Science, the development with that. I guess there's probably more to come on this, but I appreciate you. And once again, the reason, you're from Jonesboro. This is a school that's down in Garland County, but
it's a state school.
It's a state school.
It's not a local school district where, but
you have constituents that send their kids there.
Right.
And then
Mark Lowry has 5 constituents with children there. But I would say that we have pushed and asked for the unredacted version of the executive summary and the investigation report, 64 pages of things some things have been redacted, and we have just said, you should be able to print that unredacted version off, bring it in, and let us, those of us that were in that meeting, read through it and make a determination. And then we'll turn that report back over to you, so you walk in with it, you walk out with it.
Right.
But they're discussing that now, but a lot of that depends on whether or not the director, Corey Alderdice, will, I guess, release it, because he basically has a right to refuse that, but that's forcing us to go ahead and bring them before JPR, and then everything is public, live stream, the whole 9 yards.
All right, so remind everybody of what you can say about your time in Iraq.
Well, I was picked up by the Army and thought I was going as a contractor, but after a month and a half, the colonel came in and said, Dr. Smith, if you want to stay, raise your right hand and swear in. And so immediately upon doing that, the next morning, he said, hey, you're a GS-15 Step 1. And I said, is that good? I didn't know. I was over there just to serve and be an embedded senior social scientist, but I served over there for 65 and a half months. And so that's why I love mowing my yard now. You know, I'll cut it, water it, and mow it again, because it's desert, it's arid.
Yeah.
And but one of the things that I did, and I don't know if I've mentioned this to you, but the Chinese have come in behind us in our military action and been involved in the oil field production kinds of things.
I heard that a few years ago.
Well, yeah.
That they kind of are laying claim to some of that, right?
Well, yeah, they are, and they want it because they've got experience in wells and that kind of thing. But one of my lieutenant colonels, Lieutenant Colonel Michael R. Eastman, one of the greatest leaders I've ever been around, said to me, why don't you fly down to where the Chinese are meeting with local officials and the military, the PRTs, provincial reconstruction teams, and since you're a Mandarin speaker, why don't you just browse, mill around, listen, don't say anything, just, I don't want them to know you speak and understand Mandarin, so listen. And one of the
because I want to remind you, because you also spent time in places in China, right? I mean,
yes, along the China border with Burma or Myanmar for years. But the big takeaway for me from that meeting down in the oil fields was the Chinese said, let's let the Americans fight the war, and then we'll come in and take over
the
oil fields.
Wow.
You know, as a service to the Iraqi people.
And when was this?
Would have been between 2008, probably 2009, 2010.
Wow, that's a strategy right there.
Yeah.
So we spend trillions of dollars, or $1 trillion or whatever we spent,
right,
and blood of American soldiers,
yes,
and then they come back in behind it. And
well, I actually witnessed pallet loads of $100 bills being moved in the bed of pickup trucks that we also provided, and it was just constantly money.
Wow.
You know, for the Sons of Iraq, you know, other programs that we were trying to do, and it was all well intentioned, but it was never sustainable.
Yeah. So what can you tell us about? You see, you met a guy over there who's now challenging Ilhan Omar for her congressional seat.
Chris Kelly. He was on my team. I was actually his team leader at the time with our human terrain team, and we were down in at Kabadar or Talil Air Base in southern Iraq. And one day he just said to me, he was a research manager on our team in uniform there serving, and he said, Brant, I just need to get out of this ConX. I've got to go do something. And I said, well, you can go anytime you want out on mission. And he said, I really need to get out. And so I began to put Chris in the Humvees and out on missions, and I photographed him as often as I could. He thrived. And so when he told me, when he announced that he was running against Ilhan Omar, he said the fascinating thing is he's also a Minneapolis police officer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm reading that right now about him.
And his patrol beat basically is within the Somali community up there.
Wow.
And so he said, Brant, what I learned in Iraq about networking with local nationals and how to deal with other cultures has really benefited me as a police officer. And he said, the Somalis are coming to him and they're saying, we need you to run against Ilhan. She does not represent us. She's an embarrassment. And so I asked Chris, I said, are you running as a Republican? You know, I was trying to be diplomatic. What party are you affiliated? And he said, well, I went to the Republicans, but they weren't interested in me, so I decided to run as an independent.
Wow. Okay.
And I think he's gaining traction. He's been on Fox numerous times.
Yeah, I see this.
And,
I see this is a screenshot up at the Hill of him on Fox. Vet challenges Omar for her seat in Congress, an independent from Minnesota.
Well, and he's solid.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you're living and working with a battle buddy in a combat environment, there's not a lot of things that don't surface.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that this officer, or this Iraq war vet, Chris Kelly, challenging Ilhan Omar, hasn't married his sister or anything like that.
I don't think you would ever get Chris to even admit that, you know,
yeah,
but no.
Yeah. Well, Ilhan Omar married her brother, so that's a thing.
Yeah, well, keep it all in the family.
That's right, I guess.
No, I'm really proud of Chris, and we talk about every 2 weeks, and he's got that Minnesota accent, you know, and it just is so thick, but he represents, I believe he'll represent his district so much better than what we've got now.
Wow. So when y'all talk, y'all ever, reminisce about the time in Iraq?
All the time. Yeah. As a matter of fact, one of the first comments he made to me in one of our initial conversations was, hey, you took a lot of pictures out there. Can you go back and look and pull up any photograph that you have of me and send it to me? So I went back. Took me like an hour and a half to go through, thumb drives and hard drives, and I found probably 20 photographs of him out dealing with Iraqis in a market town.
Wow.
And, we had security around us. He was armed. I was unarmed at that time. But I would walk right into the tea shops and sit down, and Chris would go with me, and we'd sit there and drink tea and talk to people. The thing is, if you don't talk to people you don't know what's on their mind. And that was one of the flaws with our strategy in Iraq. We never stopped long enough to ask the common people of Iraq, what do you want? Wow. We came in with our programs and our plans, and we executed those programs and plans, but they're unsustainable because there was not really a lot of buy-in from the nationals. And so I still relate to several Iraqis and consider them friends, but Chris was a natural. And I think the people of his district and his patrol area recognize him as, he may be the big 6'3", whatever size he is, American, white national guy, American, but he's going to represent the Somalis better and literally help them instead of promoting himself if he makes it to DC.
So that's what they're upset. Ilhan Omar promoted herself,
She's more interested in her own notoriety and her own fame than her own people.
That's pretty clear.
It's strange that President Obama at the time would send thousands of Somalis to one district. It was almost like the strategy here is, let's get 60, 70,000, I don't know what the number is, Somalis in that one district, and then eventually they'll produce a candidate that will win against any other candidate that runs. So, and that's where we are with Ilhan Omar.
Definitely a strategy. Well, State Representative Brant Smith, it's always good to have you on. I appreciate that connection there. That's a very good story. And also the work that you're doing with the Arkansas School for Math and Science, trying to get to the bottom of that, and running for 4th term. So congratulations on that.
I appreciate that, Paul. Thank you very much.
All righty. Have a great weekend. Folks, we're going to wrap things up here in just a minute. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work that we're doing here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce? the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Go to conduitforcommerce.org right now.
What's going on? Of course, the Chinese Communist Party just does a great job of hiding things, and all the information's there. The mainstream media just hasn't portrayed it because the Chinese Communist Party has huge sway in the United States and elsewhere. And that's what the book's about. It's really talking about how they've influenced us to consider them to be something other than what they are, which is really a horrible regime.
And then you've got the current president of China, who's essentially changed the rules, and now he's going to be the leader for life. Which it reminds me of Mao. Are there similarities between President Xi Jinping and Mao, in your opinion?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, he gave a speech just a few weeks ago where he mentioned the word struggle 60 times. They haven't used that word since Mao. And so it evoked for many of the Chinese the Cultural Revolution, which was a horrible time when many people were killed, many people were forced into these gulags where they were brainwashed. And so the China that I lived in from 2002 to 2004 has taken a turn for the worse. Of course, the Chinese Communist Party hasn't changed their nature. They've just become more visible. And again, thanks to the kids in Hong Kong for forcing them to show their hand.
Can I ask you about foreign investment? I think we talked about this a little bit last time, but the Chinese government, they go into countries and they want mineral rights. They want they promise jobs. In my home state of Arkansas, we have 6 Chinese companies that are supposed to come here at some point in the future. All that is kind of tied up and on hold because of the trade war. I've talked to people that think it's a Trojan horse. Do you kind of feel the same way? What are your thoughts on how they're a developing nation under World Trade Organization rules, and yet they can interject billions of dollars into these other countries?
Yeah, in fact, they create these onerous loan terms that nobody really knows because they're all done in secret, and usually it involves paying somebody off. But I think that the most egregious thing for Americans is if they're coming to America to invest money, it's because they've taken money out of Americans' retirement funds. So right now, Wall Street is sending money from our retirement funds over to China. And what they do is turn around and come back and buy some strategic piece of technology or property here in the United States with our own funds. And of course, you'll never see that money again because, the auditing and the transparency requirements within the country is absolutely doesn't follow any convention here in the West. So, it's really, they really are clever in the way they do things, and we have been just absolutely rated.
Okay, that's huge news about this. Essentially, it's a cycle coming from America to China, then back into America. Again, we're talking with Brigadier General Robert S. Spalding, Senior Fellow at the Hudson Institute, author of this book, Stealth War. All right, welcome back, folks. And you need to check it out. We don't have a lot of time. We're going to let Johnny Cash play us out. To play us out. What does that mean? What does that mean to play us out? Anyway, here is your meme of the day. Who is this courtesy of? Courtesy of, it's once again 4_touchdowns. He's got good ones, man. On Instagram, 4_touchdowns. It's a picture of Greta Thunberg. Where's she standing? Where is that? On a boat in Sweden. Oh, it's that non-emissions boat or whatever, that carbon neutral boat, which can't possibly be carbon neutral. They've stolen my childhood is what it says here. And then it's a picture of a little boy carrying a bucket of fruit in a field. Cool story, bro. They've stolen my childhood. Yeah, right. Yeah, cool story, bro. This is a really good one, and it highlights. By the way, just check out our interview with Gregory Wrightstone that we did. It's going to be loaded up at the Conduit News YouTube channel. Go to Conduit News YouTube and click subscribe and the little bell to receive notifications. Folks, it's all the time we have here today. We'll be back here on Monday. Have a great weekend. Be safe.